sounded the alarm, but not before the virus has died from the disease. Chinese authorities are trying to control the information on the president. Already heavily censored Chinese social media.
Demonstrators lay body bags on the grounds of the Arizona state capitol in Phoenix. They are protesting Republican Governor Doug Ducey's decision to lift COVID-19 restrictions on restaurants, gyms, and other businesses. Among the demonstrators,
China's liaison office in Hong Kong is a potent symbol of Chinese rule over this city. It represents the interests of the ruling Communist Party.
Ordinarily, protesters would be risking their lives demonstrating on this runway. But COVID-19 has grounded most flights in and out of Amsterdam's Schiphol airport.
Another fruitless visit to Baghdad's Central Criminal Court. Abbas and Widat's son Ahmed is a tuk-tuk driver and was detained in February while taking part in anti-government protests.
Demonstrators lay body bags on the grounds of the Arizona state capitol in Phoenix. They are protesting Republican Governor Doug Ducey's decision to lift COVID-19 restrictions on restaurants, gyms, and other businesses. Among the demonstrators practicing social distancing was retired healthcare safety officer Charlie Schaitberger.
We're frustrated with Governor Ducey's decision. Putting the body bags out there with the Grim Reaper was very difficult because we think it's really going to happen.
Ducey says the time is right for gradual reopening.
This is a green light to continue going forward on the way out of this pandemic. Now, this is not a green light to speed. This is a green light to proceed, and we're going to proceed with caution.
President Donald Trump is pushing to reopen the U.S. economy despite warnings from health officials like Dr. Anthony Fauci. But a large majority of people do not fully agree with Ducey or Trump. A new poll shows more than 80% of Arizonans say they're not ready to return to gyms, restaurants, hair salons, and other public spaces. Those results are similar to nationwide polls. More than 150 Arizona business owners signed an online letter saying it is too soon to reopen Arizona. Award-winning chef and restaurateur Charlene Badman says the risks to her customers and staff are far too great.
With that possibility that we could make somebody sick.
Both say they're frustrated with the media and widespread misinformation.
They think it's a hoax still. There are still people out there that don't believe this is real.
The press is giving a lot of attention to the people that want to reopen.
Opponents of early reopening fear it will lead to another outbreak, which will then force officials to clamp down again, magnifying the economic damage.
It's just an awful situation. And nobody wants their grandmother to die. I wouldn't think. Certainly not so they can go bowling.
To date, more than 620 Arizonans have died from COVID-19, and the number of new infections is rising. Set to reopen this weekend, movie theaters.
China's liaison office in Hong Kong is a potent symbol of Chinese rule over this city. It represents the interests of the ruling Communist Party. In January, Lu Huining was appointed its top envoy. Analysts describe him as President Xi Jinping's enforcer.
He's a hardliner. I think he's someone with the iron fist in a velvet glove. I think he's someone whom Xi Jinping trusts. He's someone who is well experienced in security matters, and he's someone who is senior in the party, the Central Committee member.
Against a soothing soundtrack, Lu recently outlined China's priorities, including a call for a new security law. Tam Yu-chung is Hong Kong's sole representative to China's parliament, the National People's Congress, and he's met Lu.
He is a very practical and reasonable person. He's also very gentle. He has a responsibility to get Hong Kong back on the right track.
Since Lu's appointment, police have arrested 15 prominent pro-democracy figures and detained hundreds of other activists, including a 13-year-old student. The police deny they're using social distancing rules to contain a resurgent protest movement. China's top envoy in Hong Kong is worried about another disease, what he calls the political virus, warning that China will not sit back and allow what he calls this demented force to continue. And that's led to accusations that China's government is simply exceeding its powers here.
And the policy is now much more confrontational, much more willing to directly intervene in what had previously been the affairs of the Hong Kong government.
It's been a fractious time in Hong Kong's parliament as well, where quarrels are turning violent, ahead of elections in September, in which pro-democracy politicians are expected to win more seats. And that's not an outcome China's leaders want.
Ordinarily, protesters would be risking their lives demonstrating on this runway, but COVID-19 has grounded most flights in and out of Amsterdam's Schiphol airport. The national carrier KLM says it will need up to €4 billion from the Dutch government to get back in the air. These demonstrators and some politicians say a return to business as usual is unacceptable.
Corona forced aviation to a standstill, but it also means that this is a moment for us to reset an industry that's so polluting and causing so many carbon emissions. So if we're going to support aviation companies, then we should set environmental goals, environmental conditions to that support.
Before the coronavirus crisis, more than 70 million passengers passed through Schiphol every year. On Friday, the government reaffirmed plans to develop the airport still further. Environmentalists had expected an announcement on CO2 cuts.
The COVID-19 pandemic has not only brought health threats and economic hardship, but to some here also hope for drastic change. They believe this crisis is a historic opportunity to push for a more environmental friendly life, with people buying less things and taking fewer flights.
Theo Serrarens was 16 years old when he started working in Rotterdam port. In the past 40 years he's seen what he describes as a container revolution.
Ja, dat zijn complete dorpen die ze hier in één keer lossen.
Ships as large as complete villages are being unloaded here. It's like an oil spill that keeps growing. What are all these goods? Do we really need them? When do we have enough?
Serrarens lost his job and is using this crisis to rethink his and his country's future. He's not alone, and now 170 scientists in the Netherlands have written to the government calling for a major change in policy to come out of this pandemic a greener, more sustainable society.
It's an economic system that produces inequality. It preys on the weak and the marginalized. It doesn't take into account long-term, more substantial aspirations of society. It doesn't protect the environment. It doesn't protect the weak, the marginalized. It doesn't focus on anything but making more profit.
Contrasted with the plans to expand Schiphol Airport, Mural Arcel's remarks sound unrealistic. But his hope is that people in the Netherlands will use the quiet that the coronavirus has created to think again about their lifestyles and think again about air travel too.
Another fruitless visit to Baghdad's Central Criminal Court. Abbas and Widat's son Ahmed is a tuk-tuk driver and was detained in February while taking part in anti-government protests.
The charges against my son is that he blocked the roads. He didn't throw petrol bombs. He didn't even carry a mobile. He's a peaceful protester demanding his rights.
I don't know why he isn't being released. He has done nothing wrong. I just want to know his fate.
The judge has twice refused to release Ahmed on bail, but his parents hoped he would finally walk free after Iraq's newly appointed Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi promised to release detained protesters. But what was supposed to be a decisive move to mend rifts with the protest movement has turned into a political row.
Iraq's High Judicial Council announced it would only release protesters if they had not committed any crimes. But that statement seems to be at odds with the new Prime Minister's orders, who said that all demonstrators should be released except if they were involved in bloodshed.
This has led many to question the Prime Minister's authority to bring about change.
It's a political game. The Prime Minister ordered to release the protesters, but the judiciary is under the control of the political parties. There are powerful parties controlling the judiciary.
According to the Constitution, the Prime Minister has limited power over judges.
He can give advice to relieve the tension on the ground, to facilitate the judiciary processes. Otherwise, if we have anyone committed any crime or he have been charged, of course he cannot. And from the start, we say that if we have anyone who have been tried already or charged, it needs special amnesty law.
Adding more confusion, the judiciary issued a statement on Wednesday claiming that no peaceful protesters are being detained in Iraq's prisons. This has led Abbas and Widad to fear even more for their son's fate. They meet a lawyer in Tahrir Square alongside several other families. Isra Mohammed represents 15 detained demonstrators. None have been released since Kadhimi's announcement.
They're not complicated cases. All of them are charged under the same articles, which is attacking security forces with petrol bombs and vandalism.
The delay in delivering on his promises risks undermining the new Prime Minister's efforts to win over the public. It is also a sign of the challenges ahead, as he sets out to implement his program amid a deeply fractured political landscape.